Blog Talk Radio.
Well, good evening, folks. This is Dave Schmidt. I'm your host here again tonight on the Cosmic Connections. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This is the October 21st program, as I'm here in my home in Boca Raton, Florida. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. And Blanca, I want to thank you as well for being with us always every week when you can. And so, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing great, Dave, and it is good to be here and to welcome our listeners. Glad they're joining us, and so looking forward to an update. So that's always good news when there's something you can share with us.
Well, I do. I have some good update information tonight. That it's brief, but it was very good information. I'm limited in what I can share, but let's just say it was some really, really good stuff. So I'm just trying to think. I don't have a lot of general announcements other than facts. In fact, folks, workshops this coming Saturday at Fort Lauderdale and 2 weeks after that in Phoenix. And absolutely, we would love to have you. I still have lots of room. And again, I have a lot of new material that I am sharing. And the comments from the last two workshops is the people are just absolutely loving the way this has been put together. What we're seeing now is the reason, who are we? Why are we here? Why are we going through this process? Why is everything so crazy that's out there right now? And how does all the money fit into this? And what is our personal responsibility with what do we do when we get the money and all that kind of stuff? So it kind of, frames a good full picture about what's going on for us right now. So I do share that now. I did share a little bit on the preliminary program. Is that, let me say first of all, I have settled with the SEC issue with Meta One. So for me, that is done and it is over. And it's nice to know. Now, the problem was the SEC had assumed that I had received a lot of money from Meta One, and I never took a dime from them. So with that, they recognized, oh, well, that's where we were off base. Now, they did say that there were some things that I had said in the radio programs that technically were, against regulations of what can and can't be said when you're bringing in what is, asking people to invest in certain things. So what it came down to is that we came to an agreement that we just both of us just washed our hands and says, let's just move on. My agreement is I cannot talk about, promote, or sell Meta One, so I just have to continue doing what I have been doing for the last 6 months. So don't expect me to be talking about Meta One on this program, even though I'm done and I'm settled with the SEC, and I'm out. I'm out of the case. I should say no, the case is still ongoing. Technically, I'm still listed on it, but it's because it's the other people that are involved in it. It's still ongoing for them, but I've already got the word from the judge. I got the notices from the judge. We've settled with you. You won't be a part of this anymore. So that's nice to know. So I'm done with the SEC issue. But as I said, the agreement was that I wouldn't be talking about Meta One or promoting it or selling it as long as this case is still ongoing. So that's going to be a while, because one of the defendants in there is going to choose to take it to trial, and that's a year away. When you schedule to go to a trial, that trial can be a year out. So this case with the SEC and Meta One is going to be ongoing. Now, what Robert Dunlap has to say about that, that's his business. It's not mine. So don't ask me any questions about any of that stuff. I'm going to say I can't discuss it. You need to go ask them about that. But it's over for me. So that's nice to know. And I talked about the workshops coming up on Saturday, the 24th in Fort Lauderdale, November 7th in Phoenix. Now, I did get the confirmation this week. Oslo, Norway is definitely canceled. The COVID travel restrictions, I cannot go into Norway to meet with a group of people. They will not allow me to do that. So that one is canceled. And then, so I've got a big gap in there because the one after that is December 5th and 5th in Vegas, baby. We're going to do one in Las Vegas on December 5th. So I'll be locking that one in, so you can put that on your calendar. Now, I mentioned that I had a really great update, and I did yesterday I received a really great update on the currency exchange with some really good, solid, strong information. I cannot name people nor places or what exactly happened, but here's what I can say. There was a very, very large meeting between principal people on both sides of the issue, and they had a 4-hour meeting on Sunday. And my understanding is they came to some conclusions on some issues. And I also now, that's all I can say on that. And I've heard from other people that money is moving. Now, what does that mean for us? Now, folks, when I say money's moving, always have been extremely cautious about saying something like that, because you go to these blog sites, especially, Dinar recaps. Every week they're saying money's been moving 3 and 4 times. They've been saying that for 4 and 5 years, and nothing has ever happened. So I don't say that until I have absolute tangible confirmation. And here's what it was, is the person that I talked to that is in the city where these meetings took place, he talked to his source who was in the meetings. Now, when I say he was a secondary person in the meetings, he was not in the direct part with the two parties, but he was there, was present in the building, was able to overhear the conversations, and he said, this is what has come out of it, and we can basically say that money is starting to move. So that's a very, very positive sign for us on the currency exchange, especially those in the first round. Now, don't ask me when. I don't know. I don't know anything more than what I just told you. Now, but what I can say is that the workshops, I can give more detailed information. I can't do it here on the internet, because this is going to be heard by thousands of people, and they can take it and blow it out of proportion, misstate it, and create all kinds of problems. When I've got a very small group of people in a private meeting and it's not being recorded, I can give details. So at the internet, I can tell you who was in the meetings, who the principal players were, where they met, and I can tell you some of the details that had came out of it. I'll be able to share that at the next 2 workshops. So if you really want to know, it's just the way it is, folks, okay? I'm not trying to play games with this, but I have to be careful about what I say on the internet, or I'm going to end up getting shut down, and I don't want to do that. So, really good news coming on the currency exchange issues. The reports are that money is moving. And how long that takes to get to us, I have no idea, because remember, there are different sources of funding, okay? I am familiar with 3 different primary funding sources, and this was only one of them that I had received that report from. But let's just say the principal people were pretty big players in the process, okay? Now, okay? Now, let's, so I'm looking at my list here. I mentioned I'm done with the SEC issue. I got workshops coming up. I'll be able to share more there of what is going on, the new material in the workshops. I've given you the currency update. Next week, I'm going to talk about the elections process. Now, remember, I've been around this stuff for 25 years. Remember, I was a former state senator. I had my own elections that I ran for 16 years. So I understand elections. I understand how they work. I'm going to talk about, 4 years ago, why was the polling so far off between, Trump and Hillary Clinton? Why was it that, 98% of all the pollsters were projecting Clinton to easily win and she didn't win? I'll talk about the process, how that came about, and why it was so far off, because I think the same thing is going to happen again in a couple of weeks. So, with that, Blanca, is there anything you would like to share about the comments that I just made there on any of that stuff?
Well, first of all, I do encourage people, if they get a chance to join you in the workshop, to definitely do so. Alan and I attended the one that you went to, that you did in Atlanta. The material is great. The videos, you provide some videos in there that we really enjoyed. And of course, you are giving out the presentation because there's a lot of content in them, and so then people can review it. So I encourage it, especially if Dave's getting these nice updates then he can probably give you more detail about who met who, when, and why, and all that kind of stuff. And so it sounds to me, just by the way your voice sounded, that it is a good update, significant one.
Very good.
And yeah, so that's good, and that you're quite confident in the people who share that with you, and so that's good. We it had been quiet for a while, but it's not surprising. All kinds of things are popping out there all over the place. So it's nice that something like this has come out too, and it's nice that you shared it. And then finally, congratulations. I'm glad to hear that this thing with the SEC has been settled, at least for you. I know you were involved in that, and it made a big impression on your life, and you handled it like a champ. So, that's great. That was nice and admirable to watch. But I'm glad you ended up on the right side of that, and I can understand, the agreement just to keep things separate while this other, while the case continues for other matters. So, congratulations, and I guess we're just going to carry on.
Well, also it's important to know that there were never any criminal charges in the SEC issue. They said it was a civil issue. They had some civil charges. And in essence, I've been totally removed from it, so that, if you try to do a search on my record, you'll find nothing ever happened. So because they've dropped everything. The SEC has dropped everything. It was a civil dispute, and we came to an agreement and a settlement that I just don't talk about it anymore, and that was fine with me because it just means I'm just doing what I've already been doing. The other positive thing was, they froze my checking accounts. They froze my accounts and the accounts from Meta One, so my checking accounts are back open now, and so I got access to some funds I didn't have there for about 7 months. So
wow.
It's nice to know, but yeah, they froze 2 of my very large primary checking accounts, and I couldn't use that money for 7 months. So yeah, so those are back and fully functional and operational. So okay.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
That's good news.
Anything else in there you'd like to share with us?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Now, before I go in and talking about the program tonight, folks, once again, I'm going to give a Nasara update because people are constantly asking questions on this, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of people that are being told about Nasara. It's important to know, first of all, there is no such law. There is no Nasara law. The law does not exist. But let me be very clear. There is a concept in the Nasara that could possibly happen. But here's what we need to understand if Nasara is going to be implemented and to come into place. One of the things that I learned when I was in the legislature, I says, you can bring me a great idea for a bill, something you want to be put in the law, but I always ask the question, okay, you're going to win if this comes into law. Who's going to lose? Who are the losers? Who's going to lose in this change in law? And how powerful are they? And so that's the big question to ask in Nasara. And what I noticed is the people who talk about it never, ever address that issue. They just says, it's going to happen, it's going to do this is going to take place. And they don't stop and says, wait a minute. You know who's going to lose in this? The whole complete existing financial banking industry. For Nasara to be put into place and for the new quantum financial system to come into place as they described, it means the whole complete cabal-based financial banking industry has to go away. And this is going to replace it. Folks, those are the most powerful people in this world, money-wise. They aren't just going to roll over and die and walk away and say, okay, it's all yours now. They will fight this to the nth degree. So, in my opinion, the only way that Nasara can happen is if there is some massive climactic event that basically throws out our complete government and banking institutions as they are run now, and new ones will come into place. I don't see that happening. Unless there is some huge climactic event that's beyond the control of our normal functioning systems now. What I mean is beyond the control is that it's almost like there has to be some sort of off-world powers that will come in and just wipe them out. Because those are the powerful people of this world. Those are the people that have had us in different forms of slavery for thousands of years. And they aren't that weak yet to just walk away or to let it be taken over. So there has to be someone that's going to take the Nasara, Gesara, and the quantum financial system. Someone has to put it in place and enforce it. And it means there's going to be the current people are going to have to either walk away or they're going to fight it to the nth degree. And I just don't see them walking away. So that's my comments about that. So please don't think, no, I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying in our current world, I don't see it happening because the losers are too powerful. So that's why. Okay. Blanca, you want to make any comments about that?
Well, I think the assessment is correct. There will definitely have to be a big impact on the current power structure and current financial situation. But I think some of the turmoil that we're seeing is just that. I think right now we're maybe saying around the political front. And if Trump wins, there'll still be some political jockeying, but I think maybe the next move could be in the financial area. But I think we'll probably, if that is so, we'll probably see more signs of that after the elections if Trump wins. But yes, I agree with you. There's got to be some very, very significant change going on, but we'll see it. Just like right now we see the battle, the political battle, and it's very obvious, well, for people who have eyes to see.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see the financial battle after the elections, if anything like a Nasara is going to come through, which is, more freedom, more abundance, asset-backed currencies, all that sort of thing that the concepts they seem to talk about when they're talking about Nasara, Jasara. And even if one were to say, yes, that's going to happen, I doubt it's going to happen in the blink of an eye, even though the Bible says so.
No, I get it. Now, it's possible that certain aspects of Nasara can be, phased in over a number of years. Now, that's possible, but I just don't see this as one big, huge event that, boom, there it is. That ain't going to happen, folks. That ain't going to happen. Remember, one of the big things in Nasara is that there's a complete, what is called debt jubilee. Who's going to give the banks the trillions of dollars that they're going to lose because people aren't going to pay their debts anymore? I mean, do you think they're just going to get up and walk away and allow somebody? That money has to come from somewhere. Now, I'm not saying that money isn't out there, but I just don't see it in that manner. And there's a real issue around the debt jubilee because here's what it comes down to. People who are responsible and don't have any debt aren't getting anything, and the people who are absolute misfits in their overburdened in debt and misuse their money, they're getting bailed out. How fair is that to the whole system, you see? So there's different aspects to it. Some people say, no, the debt jubilee only applies to the countries. The countries will be relieved of their debts, but not the individuals. So there's so many different stories running around it. But here's the issue. It's now running to the point there are hundreds of thousands of people out there that are believing this. And they don't do their homework. They don't go through the process. They don't ask the questions. Where does the money come from? What does it take to have it implemented? And who's going to lose in this? And how big of a fight are they going to put up? So until you can answer those questions, it just doesn't make sense. So, okay. All right. Anything else you want to share, Blanca?
No, I think we covered that one good.
Okay. Well, tonight's program is going to be a shorter program, but I'm going to talk about the upcoming economy. Now, I've talked about that we're probably going to see some shifts and changes taking place. Here's the reality is, we're still in the COVID scenario. Now, the media is not talking about it as much as they normally do, but the reality is there are still millions and millions of people who are unemployed. There are hundreds of thousands of businesses that are out they're not operating, or they've gone out of business. And so there's literally millions of people who don't have the money to pay their bills. They don't have the money to pay their rent or their mortgages, which means if they're not paying their rent, then it means their landlord isn't paying their mortgage. So there are literally millions of mortgages that aren't getting, and loans that aren't getting paid back to the banks. And the banks, that means, are going to start hurting big time. And it takes 4 to 5 months for all this to begin to start unraveling before we start seeing the result of the massive foreclosures and bankruptcies. And the projection is we're going to start seeing that probably shortly after the first of the year into February and March. And what that means is that one of two things are going to happen, or either there's a possibility of combinations of both. One of them is you're going to have a massive complete collapse of the banking industry. Now, for those of you that were around in 2008, you remember there were literally hundreds of banks that went under in 2008, and there were millions of people that lost money that had in their banks. You can't be dependent upon the 250,000 insurance from the FDIC, because that isn't enough out there to cover hundreds of banks. It's only designed to cover a small number of banks at one time. And the other thing is, what I've been told is that in that FDIC, in the fine print, they have 99 years to pay you back. There are still today, a couple million people that haven't been paid back from the money they lost back in 2008 when that collapse happened. And this one, in my estimation, is going to be scores, if not hundreds of times bigger than what happened in 2008. So what I'm saying is, be prepared. If you have a lot of discretionary money in bank accounts, you might want to be prepared of where you might want to move that into a safer place. Now, people ask, where are the safer places? Well, your best places are your hard assets, and that's gold and silver. That's your best place, okay? Because it's a hard asset. You can't necessarily, it's not totally liquid, but yet it will always have a strong value in it. The other is to possibly be purchasing bonds, that you can have a bond. Now, but what you would want to do is make sure it's not a bank bond, because if the bank goes under, then they're going to have problems. But here's what's interesting. When a bank goes under, the first people they are responsible for paying back are the bondholders. The people with the checking accounts are the last people that they are responsible for paying back. So, it is, your bonds could be solid. Another place is to get bonds off of solid, strong companies that are selling bonds that aren't going to be damaged by the financial downturn. Now, don't ask me what companies that is. I don't have any coming to mind right off. But just think it through. When we go back to 2008, where a lot of banks collapsed, there were a lot of companies that benefited from the financial downturn. So what companies are going to stay strong? The companies that are going to stay strong probably are your food companies, first of all, because remember, when people start losing money, they're always going to hold on to enough money to make sure they can buy food. Your food companies would be strong companies. Companies that are based around the necessities that we need in our everyday living of life, the things that will always be bought regardless of how bad the economy is. Those are so those are just some ideas around that. Now, hyperinflation. I want to show you a chart that is really interesting. Take a look at this chart. It goes back to 1980. And look at the slow rate of inflation from 1980, and right there where that arrow stops, that was right at about 2008. So that was your normal nominal rates of inflation. And then when 2008 hit, after that is when they started doing the quantitative easing. And that means they were literally printing up trillions of dollars and putting it out there into circulation, and giving it to the banks to make up for the loss. And look what happened. Boom. That's the result of quantitative easing, since around the first part of 2009 up until now. And what they're doing now is they're printing up these trillions of dollars of just blank fiat money and giving it to the people. And it looks like we're going to get our round 2 supplements because of the COVID scenario. And look what's happening here. Boom. We are right on the verge of starting to experience this massive inflation. This is a great chart that shows that. Look at from here. That's probably at around on this chart. Now I don't know what this number here represents, but that was at around it went from around 300 to 1200 over almost 30 years. And then it went from 1200 to about 3800 in just about 10 years. And now they're looking at this thing going straight up, almost straight up, folks. We are headed into this scenario of this massive inflation. Now, I don't know what the outcome of that is going to be, but when you look back on the history of different countries, Germany went through that shortly after World War II. Argentina went through that about 15, 20 years ago. Zimbabwe, which is one of the currencies that we have had that situation of the massive inflation. When you start going through massive inflation, it means your current currency isn't worth hardly anything, and the fiat currency that we have, it can't buy anything that it used to buy. Now, I don't know what's going to happen out of this. Remember, we are in the United States, and the United States dollar has always been the world's reserve currency, and it's always been the strongest currency of the world. But I think this has the potential to be something that's going to hit the whole world, not just the United States. So what I'm saying is it's extremely important that you be prepared for this. Now, others are saying that we're going to move into asset-backed or gold-backed currency. Now, I'm going to give you what is my opinion on that. Folks, there isn't enough gold out there to back up all of the currencies that are in place around the world now. The amount of fiat currency far exceeds the amount of gold that is out there in the marketplace. In 1971, when we came off of the gold standard, one of the main reasons Nixon took us off the gold standard was because there was a limited amount of gold, which meant there was a limited amount of money to be in circulation, which meant there was a limited amount of money that banks could loan out. So it was difficult prior to 1970 to somewhat get loans unless you were super qualified. And most loans were reserved, just for mortgages or cars and stuff like that. But what happened is when Nixon took us off the gold standard and we went to fiat currency, the amount of money available exploded is what had happened. And when that happened, that's when the credit card industry just took off. There weren't that many credit cards around prior to 1970. Now, anybody can get 3, 4, and 5 credit cards even with horrible credit, you see. So it made an unlimited amount of money. So that's the issue that we might run into if we're people who are talking about wanting to go into a gold-backed currency. There's another option to that. Instead of gold-backed, you can go back into what is called asset-backed currency. And the currencies can be backed by solid assets. Now, I was talking with a gentleman about this who's really in his know about finances, and he said something that was different. He said, Dave, what most people don't realize, what is the most valuable asset in the world? It's not gold, it's real estate. Real estate is tangible, it's solid, it never goes away, and there's a limited amount of it. And real estate that is what is called usable real estate that has value to it for certain production, is very, very valuable. And that's what makes us very strong here in the United States, because we have a lot of very valuable real estate. You go through parts of the Midwest and it's all agriculture land. There's hardly any land that is not produced through agriculture. So it is a possibility that we could move into asset-backed currencies, and with real estate being the primary asset more than gold. Now, if that happens, then that does stabilize the hyperinflation issue. It is a possibility. But it still means that there's a limited amount of money that is in circulation. Is that the amount of money in circulation can only be the amount that is backed up by the assets. But folks, real estate, trillions of dollars of real estate value that is out there. So now those are my comments around that. So I've been wanting to cover this issue, folks, and just to remember, make sure that you're prepared for what you need to do for yourself personally and your family in case we see this hyperinflation starting to come into place and they are not going to move over to having any type of assets. And if they continue what's called printing up, these trillions of dollars of fiat currency and putting it out into circulation, that's what creates the hyperinflation. And already, they're still negotiating in Congress about another $2 to $3 trillion package to send out to all the people, let alone what they're always, in the quantitative easing they're still doing for the banks. So that's a lot of what I want to talk about tonight. We have the opportunity to go into callers. If you would like to call in, if you have some questions or comments, again, that number is 515-605-9356. Again, the number is 515-605-9356. Press 1 on your touch-tone phone, and that lets us know that you would like to come on the air. So, Blanca, why don't you share with us your comments about it? Because you always have these wonderful follow-up, wonderful thoughts that you always have to share with us. You're great at it. So, share with us your thoughts.
That's nice of you to say. Well, I think your observation about inflation coming is probably correct just because of all the dollars that are being thrown out there for us to use. And it may be just the crisis needed to make a change in the financial system. We don't know. So nowadays, things have a positive, negative charge to them. So if indeed the financial system is going to be, very wacky with inflation, then someone's going to have to step in and do something about it. But that doesn't change the message, which I hope people hear, and I think a lot of your listeners have heard this, is to be prepared, because it's just not the financial situation that's teetering. There's the political situation, the educational situation, and the medical situation. So, guys, I think we're being educated on how to really take a little bit more responsibility for our lives in all these areas. So if we want more freedom, we get more responsibility. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. It's really important, again, as we enter, you've heard me talk about, and I really go into this into the workshops, is that your conscious thoughts create these energy particles called memes. And when you understand quantum physics, they set things in these memes of how we think. Human consciousness sets things into motion that creates the world that we experience. And so if you're looking at this through fear, through judgment, through attack of people that are different, what we're doing is only exacerbating and feeding the problem and making it continue to go on. It's extremely important as individuals that want to be highly conscious people that we keep ourselves in our thoughts above the drama, so that we become observers of the drama and not mental participants in the drama. And by being the observer, you have the ability to rise above it. And when you have risen above it and you've keeping yourself in a very high, strong frequency of your thoughts, you're then attracting positive things back into your life. Whenever we have a crisis like this, there are people that take advantage of the crisis, and it becomes a great life-changing opportunity, and they get very positive things that come out of it. What you experience in the crisis moment is so predicated by the frequency of the thoughts that you are producing. Because like energy attracts like energy. So if you're staying positive through the crisis, if you're staying positive through the election, if you're staying positive through the economic downturn, you have that ability to attract back to yourself very positive issues. And the higher the energy that is happening out there in the world, with a lot of it taking place, it attracts more higher energy stuff. The world of energy is neutral. All it does is magnify what you're putting into it. So if you're staying very powerful in your frequencies of thought, you're going to attract powerful frequency thoughts back to you. If you've allowed yourself to go into very negative criticalness, judgment, and attacking, and fear, and anxiety, then that's what you're going to attract back in your life. So, okay? Well, Blanca, I didn't see anybody else, kind of show that they wanted to call in, but would you like to have any follow-up comments there?
Well, I was looking while you were talking, and I don't see any raised hands either. And so I think we covered what we needed to cover, and I think you ended on a good note in that, yes, there's a lot of things happening, a lot of challenges, but the real test is, can we stay in our own peaceful situation? Can we be proactive about our situation, and to just realize it's a test in consciousness.
Yes. Crisis creates opportunity. That's what I always say. Crisis creates opportunity. So in the midst of the crisis is where you have the opportunity to make some great changes in your life. And crisis can be the opportunity to make very positive, powerful changes for yourself if you come into it from that perspective. So, okay. Well, is there anything else then you would like to share? I said it was going to be a short program tonight, and it is. We've only been here for about 35 minutes. Not even that.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. And
I think we covered the topic.
We did. And sometimes, some says, did Dave give the update in the... Yeah, I did. I gave the currency exchange update at the beginning of the program. You can listen to the recording, if you want to hear that. So, well, okay. So, I think we're ready to call it an evening here because I don't need to go on and talking about a lot of stuff. So, okay. So, folks, thank you very much.
Right.
We'll see you next week on the program. And yes, I'm going to give some great analysis of what's going to be taking place in the election the following week. So, thanks a lot and have a wonderful